and then another hour and a half at lunch. Lunch was a lot more fun, okay? I'll just say that. But here's what I would want to say about your elders. That was an extraordinarily transparent meeting for all of us. It was direct, it was honest, it was full of grace and compassion, and it was authentic. Your elders love you too. You may not always agree with the decisions they make, but they love the daylights out of this church. They love you. Good group of guys. And then Saturday night we had our second visit with your search committee. We'd already met with them once, and we reunited with a couple of them this morning, and good to see them. This is just a hard process for everybody. It's hard for you because you want it to go well, and you want it to be resolved. You want to know where we're headed. It's hard for the elders because they're the ones that have to make the final decision, and they want to get it right. It's hard on the staff because whoever comes in, they've got to work with, and they don't want this if they've got this. And it's hard on the search committee because they got to stand in your kitchen when they're over for small group, and you're going to say, "That's the guy," and they got to go, "Yeah, that's the guy." So they're out there. I will tell you that they have represented you very, very well. And I will also tell you that from a candidate's point of view, it's not a cakewalk either, okay? It's a little, but they have made it, your search committee has made it a pleasure, a joy. And so support them, encourage them, and thank God for them because they've done great work. Just this process has been good, okay? We're going to talk this morning about how to handle it in our Bible class time, how to handle when somebody fails. There's my clock. How to handle it when somebody fails, okay? And the reason I want to talk about that is because I've been on every side of that question. I have had people in my life, brothers and sisters in Christ, who failed, and I handled it very, very well. I have had brothers and sisters in my life who failed, and I handled it very, very poorly. On the other side, I have failed. And people handled my failure well, and people handled my failure poorly. So I've kind of been on all sides of that issue. So I thought it'd be good for us to talk about it. So what I'd like to do is start with just a real quick audience participation moment, all right? I want everybody to stand up and start confessing their sins. No, I'm kidding. We're not going to do that. So let's start with you, sir, okay? No, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to ask a question, okay? And what I want you to do is respond all at once, everybody out loud, young and old, male and female, everybody just say it out loud. And I know that there are a lot of engineers in the room, okay? I've already discovered the fact that every other person you meet is an engineer, and every other person you meet is married to an engineer, okay? I got that. I know that engineers loathe going with the first thing that comes to mind. They want to think something a lot, okay? I don't want you to do this. This is not Jeopardy, okay? I just want you to say the first thing that comes to mind, and if you'll come up with the first answer and say it out loud, you'll be right, okay? Here we go. Who was the strongest man in the Bible? Perfect. Good. Who was Israel's greatest king? Perfect. Somebody said Jehoshaphat. No. Close. Okay. Two guys, David and Samson. They have a lot in common, just a ton in common. For example, both David and Samson are compared to Jesus a lot. There's a lot of Jesus in David and Samson. When you read the New Testament, every other verse almost, it seems like they're pointing back to David, going, Jesus and David are connected because of the lineage and the kingship and all that. So you know David's connected to Jesus. But Samson's connected to Jesus too, which is a thing a lot of us don't think about very often. But if you'll remember Samson's story, which is in Judges 15 through 18, you'll remember his story. There's a lot of similarities there. Both Samson and Jesus are singled out from before their births for a special purpose for God, right? Samson's mother receives a visit from the heavenly messenger. So does Mary. Samson's father receives a visit from the heavenly message. Joseph has the dreams. Samson and Jesus are both bound by their own people and delivered to the enemy. Both Samson and Jesus are betrayed for money. Both Samson and Jesus win their victories in part through their deaths. So there's just a lot of similarities there between Samson and David and Jesus. But now we're comparing David and Samson, okay? Here's another thing. David and Samson both killed lions, right? How many people are cat lovers in here? Let me just see. I want to see the hands of cat lovers. Okay, good, not many. What I would say to you, and I think the Lord wanted me to give you this message here. Your enemy, the devil, prowls about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour, okay? The devil is never compared to a dog. Always compared to cats, and I want you to think about that and pray about it. I have come to call you to repentance today, okay? I'm just saying. Although I did meet Lincoln's dog, and I think there may be... That's a bad dog. Okay, Samson and David both kill lions. Samson and David both fought Philistines. Okay, that's kind of the Philistines are the Pharisees of the Old Testament. Okay, they're always the bad guys. Samson and David both had major failures in their lives. And here's where they begin to diverge. Because David recovered and Samson didn't. Now, we know that David committed adultery and murder. We remember that. But that's not what we remember him for. We know that's a part of his story, but that's not a part of his legacy. His legacy is the Psalms or the temple, because he helped prepare for the building of the temple. One of David's greatest legacies is gathering everything it was going to take to build the temple. But Samson's the ultimate underachiever in the Bible. The guy who could have been and could have done so much more, but didn't. In fact, what we remember him for is the destruction of a temple. Why? Why did these guys, who are so similar, a lot compared to Jesus, they did all these other things that were so similar, but their lives take completely different trajectories. Well, think about this. I want you to think just for a second. I'm actually going to ask for you to do this. I'm asking people to call out some names here. Think about some of David's friends, acquaintances, colleagues, or mentors. You thinking about some of the friends, mentors, colleagues that David had? Somebody call out one of David's friends or colleagues or mentors. Who? Jonathan. Jonathan and David are such good friends that Jonathan literally lays down the trappings of the king. He is willing to sacrifice what was rightfully his for his friend David. That's a friendship that's hard to imagine. Who's another friend or colleague or mentor of David? Samuel, very beginning of his life. Samuel is there. Who's another one? Joab. Joab gets to be David's right-hand man by killing David's right-hand man. Okay, kind of a rough guy, but he's there for David. Joab cleans up a lot of messes for David. He's there for David a lot. There's Nathan. I mean, Nathan has the kind of relationship with David where he can come into the king's throne room fully aware that David has already shown his willingness to murder in order to cover up his sin, and Nathan can get right up in his grill and say, "You're the man." Now that's a secure relationship right there. Okay, name me some of Samson's friends. And therein lies the problem. You got me. You nailed me on that one. Name me some of Samson's male friends. He doesn't have any. Every time we see Samson, he's either with a woman or he's alone. Every single time. In fact, we don't find out Samson has brothers until the end of his story when they come to collect his dead body from the toppled temple. he had nobody. Here's what I want to suggest to you. Surviving failure depends upon the relationships that you have. Okay? If you have relationships, you will survive. If you do not, you will not. So, what I'd like to do for the next, however many minutes we have left, is talk about how we can be there for people, okay, when they fail. I want to look at two passages, one in Galatians chapter 6, and then we'll go to another one in the Old Testament in 1 Samuel chapter 12. Okay, Galatians chapter 6, 1 Samuel chapter 12. What we're going to do is read a little bit in Galatians chapter 6, and then I'll stop and talk about what we read, kind of unpack what's there. Acts, Romans, 1 Corinthians, Galatians. I have to do that sometimes. Do you ever do that? Okay, Galatians chapter 6. Here we go. Verse 1. Now, like I said, I'm going to read a little bit and then stop, and we'll talk about it. Okay? Brothers and sisters. Okay, we got to stop. I think it's interesting. Paul's about to talk about failure. Okay, he's brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in a sin, he's going to say, here's what you do. I think it's interesting that Paul addresses the group, the church, everybody. Okay, I don't know what the Greek word here is, but he doesn't go, if you have a brother or sister caught in sin. He says, if y'all have a brother or sister caught in sin. He's addressing everybody. I think that's significant. Because I think sometimes people can be so shredded by sin, they can be gutted and so wounded that one person cannot be there to stop the bleeding and repair the damage and restore what has been lost. It takes a lot of people to gather around somebody when they fall. What that does is it acknowledges the fact that we all have different gifts. Right? Paul just got through in the first part of, in the last part of Galatians chapter 5, talking about the fruit of the Spirit, the love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, and self-control. And now he's saying, look, y'all have all these things. I want you as a group to use them to help people who fall, brothers and sisters. Years ago, I did a wedding. It was actually at our first church, and it was a young couple, and they were like every other young couple who gets married. They were absolutely shell-shocked, completely freaked out by the experience of the wedding. They hadn't slept. They were probably dehydrated. They were wearing uncomfortable clothes. They were standing in front of a whole bunch of people, which was an uncomfortable moment for them, and they were scared to death. So they had a real 1,000-yard stare in their eyes, and they did not notice anything that was going on around them. Very often when I do weddings, I will have to say I do, okay? Because they're just so shell-shocked, all right? So I'm up there doing the ceremony, and they've got the deer in the headlights look, and I'm doing the ceremony, and one of our elders, who's about halfway back, gets up and starts walking down the aisle, a guy named Don Wood. Don Wood was the director of the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration in Atlanta. That made him the boss of all the air traffic controllers. Way back when Ronald Reagan fired the air traffic controllers for striking, Don Wood's the guy he called to say, fire them. Go. So he was kind of a big dog. So, and he was a big man. So I'm doing the ceremony. Don gets up and starts walking toward the front. There's a little voice in the back of my head that says, hey, did you notice that Don is walking down front toward you? And I said, yes, I did. Hush, I'm trying to do this sermon. So Don just keeps coming. And he walks up on stage. He walks past the bride and groom. And as he walks by me, I kind of turn with him to say, what are you doing? And when I turn around, the baptistry curtains are on fire. The florist had put the candles too close to the baptistry curtains. And when the air conditioning came on, it's July hot in Georgia, y'all. The air conditioning came on, the curtains billowed out, and they caught on fire. And Don walked up there. I mean, this guy is the boss of the air traffic controllers. He can handle a crisis. He can be calm in a crisis. That's his gift. He walked up there, he grabbed those curtains, he yanked them down in the baptistry. There was fizzle, sizzle, and hiss, and then it was over. And a collective gasp in the audience. And then Don walked back by me and said, carry on, and just kept going. And honestly, I'm rarely at a loss for words, never at a loss for words. Ask my sweet wife. Never. I was at a loss. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know where I'd stop. I didn't know where to pick up. I didn't know whether to say thank you. We had an older lady sitting over here. She was about 83 years old. She patted her cheeks and in an unusually loud voice said, "Oh Lord, we've had a baptism of fire." So, and then we picked up. So, in a crisis, you need people like Don, okay? I call these people the firefighters of the kingdom. They've got that gift where they can walk into the burning house when everything is coming down around us, and they just have a calming presence. They know what to do in that crisis. They know how to settle everything down. When somebody is entangled in sin and that whole thing blows up, you need people like Don Wood. You need the firefighters who can walk in and just chill it all out. But once the fire's out, and the debris is cleared away, somebody's got to rebuild that house. You need a different set of gifts for that. I told you that some people handled my failure well. There was a lady in our church, in our neighborhood, who was not a very good firefighter. She would freak out. What she was very good at was being there for you over a very long period of time in a very consistent way. She brought me lunch every Tuesday night for the next day. Paper bag, and inside the paper bag was a turkey sandwich and a bag of chips and some carrots and a cookie. Every Tuesday night, she brought that to my house. Never said a word, just brought that to my house. I will never, ever, ever forget that, because she was there for me over and over and over. A couple of years after all that, I emailed her and I said, I just want to tell you how beautiful are the feet of those who bring the good news of peace, preach the good news of peace from Romans 10. And she emailed back and said, I'm not a preacher. And I said, oh, yes, you are. Your pulpit was a paper bag, and the communion you delivered was a turkey sandwich and a bag of carrots. You preached the good news to me. Okay? It takes all of us. When somebody fails, we all have to be a part of that process. Some of us are going to put out the fire. Some of us are going to be there to help rebuild the house. But it takes a group effort, okay? That's the first part, brothers and sisters. You're thinking, holy smoke, we're going to be here a long time because that was just one word. Okay, no, we won't. Okay, here we go. Brothers and sisters, if. Okay, we got to stop again. I'm sorry. Sometimes the word if means potential results. If you work hard, you'll get rich. Okay? If you work hard and save your money, you'll get rich. And you know what? You're right. Potential. Sometimes the word if means unlikely results. Heard this a lot in college. If you're the last guy in our college, I might go out with you. Translation, I am not going out with you. Okay? Sometimes the word if means results that are all but certain. In the movie, if you build it, they will come. He did, they came. That's this if. Brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in a sin, and they will be. Okay? This is not optional for us. I wish it were. This is not a thing that we hope never happens, because it will. I don't know how many people we have in the room right now. We have enough to know that somebody in this room right now is struggling with something. And it's about to eat you alive. And nobody knows that but you and God. So we all need to know we got to be there when this thing hits, because it will hit. Brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in a sin, we got to take that really seriously, the sin. I'm going to talk more about that in the sermon this morning. But sometimes I think our tendency is to minimize sin. We call it other things. Paul gets onto the Corinthians for that in 1 Corinthians chapter 5. And some of us take the Corinthian, what I call the Corinthian gambit. We just kind of minimize it. You know, it's not that bad. It's not, you know, it's a little mistake. A mistake is what you make on your taxes. Okay, and you pay your fine and move on. Well, we don't have any. I always try to be careful about the words I use, because I don't want children to hear things, but Sometimes we're adults, we'll go, sometimes that was stupid. That was just stupid. No, stupid is what you do in high school. Okay? Stupid is the kind of mistakes you make in high school. Sin is not that. Our younger son, he and a bunch of his buddies in high school they wanted to be the next Steven Spielberg, so they started making movies. And we went to an event one night, a theater event, and another parent, a guy named Francis Carden, who's from Britain, came up to me and he started apologizing. He said, I have no idea. If I'd known they were going to do that, I wouldn't have permitted it. I don't know what was in their mind. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about, Francis. And he said, oh, you haven't seen the YouTube. And I went, oh, it's on YouTube. He said, I'll send you a link. So I go home later on that night, open an email from Francis, click on the link, and sure enough, this YouTube video pops up, and there's a boy standing. Can I turn around and look at the balcony back there? There's a boy standing on a railing of a balcony over a pool at a very nice house in a neighborhood called Sugarloaf in Atlanta, where Francis lived. He's standing on a balcony over a pool, and it's dark, and he's a long way off, but I can tell that's my kid because of the shape of his head, okay? You know your kid from a mile away by the shape of his head. He's standing on a balcony over a pool, and I'm talking to the screen, and I'm going, don't you do that. Don't you do not jump. And then all of a sudden, he erupts in flames. Real, not CGI flames, real fire. And then I'm going, jump, jump. And he jumps into the pool, and the flames go out, and they haven't edited this video that they've made yet, and you can hear all the boys going, whoa, that was so cool. And so here was my first thought. My first thought was, how am I going to tell his mother? Baby, a long time ago, when Grant was... she knew that one immediately. She heard me. Okay. So he comes walking in about midnight that night, and I'm sitting there in the living room waiting for him. You ever do that with your kids? You're sitting there waiting on them when they walk in. Or maybe your parents did that to you, okay? I'm waiting. He walks in, and he stops and said, what's up? And I looked at him, and I said, what were you thinking? He went, oh, that was cool, wasn't it? No, it wasn't cool. That was stupid. Sin is not that. Sin is not a mistake. Sin is not stupid. Sin is folly, which comes from the word fool. As in the fool has said in his or her heart, there is no God. When we get tangled up in sin, we're living like there is no God. And it's not a game. And it's not just stupid, and it's not just a mistake. It's deadly. Brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in the sin, you who are spiritual, and that's you, okay, you've got the fruit of the Spirit. That's not the preacher, that's not the staff, that's not the elders, that's not the deacons, that's not the nice lady sitting down the pew from you, that's not the person that you know, that man who's just an unbelievable prayer warrior. That's everybody. You've got the Spirit. You are the spiritual. Brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in a sin, you who are spiritual, restore. That's the word they used for broken bones, for resetting a broken bone. That tells me two things. This really is serious. Sin is like somebody has a broken bone. And if you had a broken bone in that culture, you couldn't work. And if you couldn't work in that culture, your kids couldn't eat. It was a life sentence for you if you had a broken bone. So that's how serious this is. The other thing that word restore tells me is that there's a lot of hope here, because when a broken bone is reset, it's stronger. So when a brother or sister falls and they're restored, they are stronger than they were before if they're truly, truly restored. Brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in a sin, you who are spiritual, restore him or her gently. Martin Luther, the Reformation leader, in his commentary on Galatians 6, says something that almost makes me cry every time I read it about that word gently. A repentant sinner is not to be given gall and vinegar to drink. If you see a brother or sister despondent over a sin they have committed, run up to them. Reach out your hand to them. Comfort them with the gospel and embrace them like a mother. But watch yourself, or you too may be tempted. Your friend, if you're trying to restore somebody who's fallen, your friends are gentleness and humility. Okay. Here's my frustration. I've got 10 minutes, and that's not much. Here's my frustration with Paul. And I hope it's okay that I say that, because sometimes, don't you get frustrated with some of the Bible? I do. Okay, that might have done it right there. My frustration with Paul is that he tells us what to do but not how to do it. That frustrates me because I'm a nuts and bolts kind of guy. I got a feeling that in a room full of engineers, that's frustrating to you too. I don't want to just know what, I want to know how. So look in 1 Samuel chapter 12. I want to show you one way. Look at the fact that he does, 1 Samuel 12, okay, back in the Old Testament. The fact that he doesn't tell us exactly how probably means that there's more than one right way, right? I'm going to show you one way that it was done in the Old Testament. Really cool story with Samuel. I'll tell you this, if you get involved with somebody in an effort, a part of a team effort to help restore somebody who's been caught up in sin, it will be messy, it will be long, it will not follow a pattern. Aristotle said, men are good in but one way, evil in many. So it'll always be different, it'll always be messy. So maybe that's why Paul didn't give us one way to do it. But here's one way. Here's the setup. 1 Samuel chapter 12. Israel has asked for a king. Okay, God, Samuel said, you don't need a king, you've got God, but all the other nations have kings, so Israel wants to be just like them. They want a shiny new king, and so God says, okay, I'm going to give you what you want. Samuel is about to confront them with that. He's going to confront them with this sin in 1 Samuel chapter 12. And in the first 5 verses of 1 Samuel 12, he sort of rehearses his history with them. The key to me is in verse 2. Now you have a king as your leader. You got your king, got what you wanted. As for me, I am old and gray, and my sons are here with you. I have been your leader from my youth until this day. Okay, so the first thing Samuel says is basically, when he's getting ready to confront them with their sin, you and me, we go way back, right? Right? That's what he's saying. We go way back. And in the next few verses, they go, yeah, you're right. We go way back, and you have never done us wrong. You haven't used your position for power. You haven't done anything to anybody. So, yes, we go way back. What I want to suggest to you is that when it's time to confront somebody, the best thing you can do to be there for a brother or sister when they fall is to be there with them before. You build relationships. What is it, Proverbs 27, wounds from a sincere friend are better than many kisses from an enemy. The best way to prepare for somebody else's failure is to be there with them before they fail, so that when the time comes, you can begin by saying, you and me, we go way back. Have fun together. Do stuff. Build things. Break things. Go hunting and kill things. Just make memories with each other, so that when one of you needs it, the other one can say, hey, me and you, we deep, right? We go way back. Really make those relationships. One of the best things you can do to build those relationships that really, really last is to serve. I've talked to some of these folks that have been on the disaster recovery events here. They talk about what it's like working side by side with other people. That's a great way to build those relationships. You're going to need that. You're going to need that. Okay, here's the second thing that happens, and that's down in verses 6 through 11. Then Samuel said to the people, he's already said, me and you, we go way back. He says, it is the Lord who appointed Moses and Aaron and brought your forefathers up out of Egypt. Now then, stand here, because I am going to confront you. Here it comes. He's about to drop the hammer, okay? Stand here, because I am about to confront you with evidence. Great, he's got video. There's evidence. Stand here, because I am about to confront you with evidence before the Lord as to all the righteous acts performed by the Lord for you and your forefathers. What? I thought he was going to pound them. But that's not what he does, which is the second lesson. First one is, Have that relationship. The second one is, before you confront your brother and sister about their sin, remind them of God's goodness. Talk about God's goodness before you talk about your brother or sister's sin. That's what Samuel does. And for the next several verses, he just kind of rehearses all the many good things God has done for them. Why does he do that? Again, I'll tell you what I think. I think Samuel knows something about temptation and sin that we forget sometimes. I think he knows that inside every temptation is a lie about God. Okay? You put a temptation on the dissection table, and you peel back its airbrushed exterior, and you pull out its jaundiced heart. What you are not going to find is a moral question or an ethical question. What you're going to find is a theological lie about God. I mean, when the serpent tempts Eve, does he come at them with a moral compromise or an ethical compromise? No. Did God really say? And you believe that? Seriously? That he came at them with a theological lie. Inside every temptation is a lie about God. So before Samuel gets up in their grill about sin, he says, God has been good to you. I think if we were to approach our brothers and sisters who are struggling in the consequences of sin with that reminder, look, me and you go way back, you know God's been good to you, that conversation is going to go in a whole different direction. Now, he confronts them. The next several verses, he just gets all over them. But then I love the way he ends it, and this is the last thing we'll say here. I love the way he ends it down in verse 23, 1 Samuel 12:23. As for me, far be it from me that I should sin against the Lord by failing to pray for you. I'm not going to sin against God by failing to pray for you. I don't know your stories. I'll bet you somebody in the room has somebody that has failed, and maybe they failed a long time ago, and they've never recovered. Maybe it's a parent. Maybe it's a kid. Whew. Grown children. All the worry, none of the control. It's awful. I will not sin against God by failing to pray for you over and over and over. Never follows a set pattern. It's always messy. But if we pray, then we have not sinned against God. Okay? You've been great attention. Thank you. Look forward to preaching for you in the next few minutes.
How deep the Father's love for us, how vast beyond all measure, that He should give His only Son to make a wretch His treasure. How great the pain of sin was! The Father turns His face away, as wounds which mar the chosen one. He sends to glory. Behold the man upon Jesus,